Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle, and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Well, Kevin, I am excited to have you back on the podcast so quickly, and this time we're recording, so that's exciting. You know, we had an awesome conversation. You took time away from your law partners while you were on retreat. You took time away from skiing on the slopes a couple weeks back to do this episode with me, and dummy me forgot to record. As I shared on the podcast about a year and a half ago, I did this very same thing to Chris Fialco, and you'd think I would learn from my mistakes, but I'm a slow learner. So I appreciate very much you redoing this with me. It was a blast of a conversation, and I'm sure we'll have some similarities from that and go in some different directions, but I just wanted to talk to you again.
Well, I'm in good company with Chris Fialco. He's a great lawyer. So anytime we can be included in the same discussion, I'll take it. But yeah, looking forward to having another great conversation. And as we discussed, it's probably going to be a completely different conversation than the last one, and hopefully we'll arrive at some helpful stuff this time as well.
Yeah, if it goes terribly, we can just tell the audience, look, it was an amazing conversation the first try. So
that's right.
Should have been there. Jake should have recorded the original conversation. But
That's
no,
right.
man, I'm pumped to have a conversation with you. Maybe one thing that would be maybe a good place to kind of kick things off that will take us around a little bit of a different bend, and then we'll kind of get into a little bit of your backstory. Is you just got back from retreat with your law partners, and so maybe just if you wouldn't mind to share a little bit about kind of what you guys were doing on retreat and the reason that you took a little bit of time away to kind of have that thought process and camaraderie. So would you mind to just share a little bit about what you guys did on retreat?
Yeah, so aside from the skiing part, which was awesome, we spent an entire day, really a day and a half, planning the next 3 to 5 years of the firm. We have regular partner meetings, like at least monthly or sometimes quarterly when we're slacking. But we find, you spend an hour, you spend two, and it's like that time is gone just in an instant. We go down an agenda. And I talk too much, so I probably take up a lot of the time. When you get a couple of defense attorneys together, there's always going to be people with a lot to say. So luckily we're all great friends. But it's a time of reflection on where have we been kind of the last couple of years, and where are we going in the next 3 to 5. And it was just tremendously useful to unplug. Up at Snowshoe where we were, like unless you're plugged into Wi-Fi, you do not have reception. And that turned out to be like a great game changer.
Oh yeah, that's awesome
for all of us. And being a small business, our spouses are in on this just as much as we are. We view them, although they're not lawyers, so they can't technically be owners of the business. They essentially are. Anybody who's in small business and has a spouse knows that they're a partner in the business as much as
100%.
The ones that are there every single day. And so it was a great time to get our spouses involved as well in some of the conversations, and just a little bit of relaxation and a lot of planning. As we've talked about this in our separate conversations. We're at a big time of transition for our firm, as we've transitioned over the course of the last year from Roberts Law Group to Roberts Marcilliat and Mills to now Marcilliat and Mills, as we've bought Patrick Roberts out of the practice, and he's transitioned to his own solo practice. And so now it's kind of like, okay, we've got the reins, and it's time sort of for the firm to transition to the next generation of lawyers. Something that Miranda and I have been kind of preparing ourselves for without knowing it for the last decade. That we've practiced together, essentially my whole career, and for Miranda, the vast majority of her entire career. And now we've brought on a third partner, Danielle Feller, that's going to be running our estates practice out in Mooresville. So, the three of us, Danielle's somebody who's also been with us for her entire career. So, the three of us are great friends and very close, and just kind of figuring out how to forge this new path together.
That is awesome. Yeah, I think there's so much value in taking that time away, something that we at our firm need to do again here soon. Just kind of hearing that was like, the call to action on that front during COVID. We, fortunately had nothing but time. There was all kinds of opportunity. And so Lance and Git and I were meeting, for pretty solid blocks of time on a weekly basis from like March until June of 2020. And the amount of kind of benefit that was reaped from that time together really played itself out over the next 2 years. But it was like a tremendous growth point in the firm. And I think that most of that can just be related back to the fact that you always hear this in the small business world, kind of the E-Myth mentality of working on your business instead of in it. And we were doing that jointly. It's very difficult when you have other partners, sometimes to really collectively work on your business instead of in it. It's hard enough to do it on your own, but
Yeah.
when you're trying to coordinate three people's schedules, um, and vantage points and all of those things, like you said, an hour or two a month it's hard to make a lot of forward progress in that time. Most of that time, generally from our side of things, goes to putting out fires. Like that is the
That's
vast
it.
majority of that, 1 to 2 hour block of time. And so, just taking time away and being outside of the business framework, or kind of whatever your normal meeting space looks like. For us, it's Zoom meetings is generally how we have our partner meetings. If you're doing it in office, wherever you are, kind of getting out of that normal space, and just from a mind shifting side of things, kind of being able to approach problems from kind of just a different attack point, I really think is game changing. And especially when you're doing something as important as planning out, a multi-year trajectory of the firm is so huge.
Yeah, and it's one thing that really struck me, I've done a lot of reading as we've kind of come in and taken over and trying to look for different vantage points on, small business, not just within the legal sphere, but outside the legal sphere where some of the best examples are. And everybody talks about, fail to plan, plan to fail. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're not intentional about deciding like where is it that we're going to arrive in the next 3 to 5 years, you're not going to arrive there. And you may not arrive there even if you do plan really, really well, but I'd rather be off by a mile than off by a zillion. Shoot for the moon and hit the stars kind of situation. So yeah, that's been a great process for us. It's the first time we've done a partner specific retreat. In the past, we've always done company wide, like everyone goes, and there's a lot of value, I think, to anyone's organization if you haven't done that, to take your whole team and just go. And we've done various spots. Sometimes we've even left the country with the whole team. Like we've taken the whole team to Costa Rica, or we've taken the whole team to
That's awesome.
Maui, which Maui's in the country, but it felt like it was in another country.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was a lot farther to get there than Costa Rica. And that's you're not no, you can't do that every year. You may not even be able to do that every 3 or 5 years. But when we have gotten to do that in the past, we've just reaped tremendous benefit from that. And loyalty of our people that we're trying to say thank you to, and also being able to game plan with them
Yes.
for what's coming next, and pulling them out of their everyday environment. Our staff and y'all staff is probably like this too. Our call volume is really high.
Yeah.
If we're in the office, they are on the phone, either serving potential clients or serving actual clients and their many family members. So unless we break out of that somehow. And sometimes maybe you don't have time to go somewhere far away. Maybe it's literally you rent a conference room just somewhere. Whatever it takes to just get away from that phone that is constantly ringing and the client's needs. A lot of times we have to help ourselves so we can help those clients.
Yeah, no, that is so cool. We did a just to echo that and the value that you take away from that. I think that a firm retreat is so amazing for a lot of different reasons. I mean, definitely the planning stages, but we did a retreat in some of them have been very kind of like planning focused with some, fun activities planned around it. But a couple summers back, we went to Charlotte, Gastonia. We stayed at the Esquire Hotel in downtown Gastonia, which is like a lawyer themed hotel, which is
Yes.
super, super cool. Um, and then went to the Whitewater Center and did rafting and other activities there. Did Top Golf together, and it's so wild to have people kind of see a different side of their coworkers, people that you feel like maybe have like a very kind of hard or difficult communication style. You just open up a different side when you're doing something that again is kind of outside of the ordinary. So I feel like from a true team building side of things, it was team building without it being forced team building, right? Like there was no team building activities that went on during this. It was all for all for having a good time together. But you just get to see a different side of your colleagues that is so healthy in terms of being able to work better together and have kind of more appreciate. You get to have conversations that aren't focused on what are we doing for this client, right? Like or kind of like superficial conversation, how was your weekend, or what do you have going on, you have any vacations, but like it's hard to have really deep and meaningful conversations without a lot of time that is committed to nothing but just being present with one another. So yeah, definitely echo that value of the firm retreat.
Yeah, 100%. And, like you guys, we have a lot of geographic spread. So we've got some folks in Charlotte, and we've got folks in Mooresville, and we've got folks in Raleigh, and then with me down in Wilmington. And so when you've got that kind of geographic spread, it becomes that much more important to get
Yes.
people together. That running that type of law practice, I think it's a real challenge. And so we're always looking for ways to bring our people together and get them to know each other on a personal level and appreciate each other on a personal level, because we have awesome people. And so our thought is the better that they get to know each other, the more understanding they're going to be of the, day-to-day issues that come up. And these are people with lives and with families and with issues that come up. And so the better we know each other, the better we're going to function as a team.
100%, man. Well, that's a fun way to kind of kick things off and to kind of maybe go a little bit back in time now. I think it was really, really cool hearing this in our conversation a couple weeks back about how you kind of got into the law profession and particularly into criminal defense. So tell us kind of what led to your decision to get into the legal field to go to law school, and then ultimately kind of what pushed you down the path of criminal defense.
Yeah, the road to law school I should have seen coming, and some I think I was the only one who didn't. But the road to criminal defense was just completely out of left field, like I think it is for so many of us. Like a lot of people don't set out thinking, I don't meet hardly anybody that says, wow, when I was 10 years old, I thought I would be defending homicide cases. Um, but the ingredients are there. And I think it was that way for me. Like I grew up in South Alabama, about as conservative as you can grow up, a member of the Southern Baptist Church. And, I probably would have been one of those people who was just as likely to say, hey, if you're accused, like you either did that or you did something else really bad. Um, so, that's my roots and where I come from. But, as I got older, and started to understand the world more and started to understand, the differences in people's life circumstances. It opened my perspective. Going to law school is what really changed everything. So going into law school at Campbell, I if I would have been in a criminal courtroom, it would have been as a prosecutor. But about a year in, they convened the Innocence Commission in one of the courtrooms at Campbell, that was across the hall from where we were going to class. And that three-judge panel convened and declared Greg Taylor innocent. And he literally walked out of there. We're watching him walk out, a free man, having been exonerated by DNA and other overwhelming evidence. And it was one of the first times in the history of the American legal system that a man has been declared innocent by a judicial panel. We do not guilty a lot. We don't do innocent a whole lot.
Hmm.
And so that particular process was not your typical post-conviction relief. And it was truly something incredible to watch. Like, I'm still friends on Facebook with Greg Taylor to this day. And getting him to, watch this guy, live his life. And the moment that really struck me, and he had a team of incredible defense lawyers. But he got to see his daughter for the first time in something like 18 years, and meet his grandchild for the first time. And that happened
Gosh, that is
right
crazy.
there, it like across from where we're going to class. And it was just an incredibly moving moment. And what struck me was, I don't want to be the person standing at the table alone. I want to be the person standing at the table beside someone, regardless of what they've done or not done, but advocating for them, advocating for that human being. We get into this to help people. I went to law school to help people. And being a defense attorney is a really unique pulpit to do that. So that's kind of what started the path. I went on to work internships at two different public defenders' offices, one at Mecklenburg and the other at the federal PD's office. And those internships have shaped the rest of my career. I learned from some incredible lawyers in those two internships and have spent the rest of my career doing what I started to learn in those two places, which is state and federal criminal defense.
Yeah, that is amazing. I mean, it's such a cool experience to see that, you know, firsthand experience shape so much of kind of what led down this path. And I think it's really, a testament to why having these type of panels at law schools, especially something as powerful as that, is so important, because I think it is healthy to see, justice really getting delivered in the right way, in the way that it's kind of ultimately supposed to work out. Whatever failings there were in the justice system that led down that path originally to a wrongful conviction, ultimately getting it right. And all of the people that had to be a part of that process to that moment at Campbell Law School, I think is just such a powerful thing. And it's a, again, in terms of why you are doing what you're doing as a lawyer, I think our whys are so powerful. It's such an important aspect of, what we're doing as lawyers, how our firms are moving, why did we get into this in the first place? And I do think that a lot of criminal defense lawyers have a really good kind of motivational why. Like, I think you almost have to, in order to get into this space, you have to have that kind of desire to help people. And I think that's part of the reason why the criminal defense bar is such a cool group of people, because generally speaking, the motivations are in the right place. The purpose is in the right place.
Yeah, well, and what I love is like there's no one size fits all story. For me, my journey at Campbell was one of figuring out, how can I be a person of faith and act from those same principles that, are sort of the bedrock of everything that I'm trying to accomplish in life, but also simultaneously stand up beside somebody who's been accused of doing something really horrible and maybe has done something really horrible. And, the time at Campbell really brought that into focus for me. So when you first walk in to the law school, I know we talked about this a little bit last time. The verse Micah 6:8 is on the wall. And I'm not going to try to quote it because it's a hard verse, but basically what it comes down to is three fundamental principles that are still on the wall in my office, which is, do justice, seek mercy, and walk humbly. And those like three fundamental values of justice, mercy, and humility, that's sort of for me the basis of my practice, and every what I'm trying to build on is those pillars. And we fail at that probably as often as we succeed, or more often. But I think the best lawyers are people, and the best firms are ones that are built on some fundamental shared principles. And maybe that shared principle isn't faith, because everybody doesn't come from that same background, but we can all still have fundamental principles that guide us, and the way we're going to treat our clients, and the way we're going to comport ourselves in court as officers of the court. And that for me has been one of the most rewarding things, is just figuring out how to build a practice that honors those fundamental principles and that treats people the right way.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think, we had I kind of asked you in our first conversation, what's in the water at Campbell, because I have met just so many great lawyers and business people and trial attorneys that have come from Campbell, and we got to do a mock trial day this past Friday at Campbell Law School. We got to use one of the courtrooms. They were super generous about, and accommodating about allowing us access to the courtrooms, and came and checked on us. I mean, it was we got great treatment down at Campbell Law School, but just kind of walking into the doors was a little bit of a special experience on my end, just because, again, there's some sort of recognition that what you are doing at this school is really translating into the world. And so I had asked you about that, and you shared the values kind of mindset of Campbell. And I do think that that is so critical to us. I think that, again, that kind of starting with why, what is the fundamental purpose that you as a criminal defense lawyer serving? What is the reason that your law firm exists? If it's just simply to, walk into the courtroom and try to get a speeding ticket reduced without some kind of bigger strategy for helping people and making an impact in the world, and trying to help lower the cost of legal services, or provide a improved client experience, or higher level representation, whatever kind of that particular kind of interest or purpose is, that's something that is so critical. And I do think that faith component, as it speaks directly to Campbell, is one of the big difference makers, because there is this kind of like shared value system of, even just going back to those three pillars that you just mentioned, seek justice, mercy, and walk humbly. These things are so simple, but again, such great guideposts for action, and really kind of allow for that culture to get built around those particular fundamental core values, however you want to talk about it. So that's so important when it comes to law school, and then obviously so important when it comes to our own firm culture.
Yeah, exactly. And what I love about those in particular is, you don't have to be a person of faith to embrace those.
Yes.
And many of the people I went to law school with were not people of faith. Some people arrive at Campbell not even knowing that it's associated with an undergraduate institution that is, backed by the Baptist Church. And they don't, overly aggressively push that side of it in the
Right.
law school. They're there to educate great lawyers. But they do so in a principled way. And what's really cool about it is, at least when I was there, which was the first year that they opened the Raleigh campus, I was being taught by some of the same people that taught my uncle, who was in the very first law school class that Campbell ever graduated,
Yeah, that's
in
crazy.
in Bowie's Creek. So there were literally people still there that had been teaching 30 plus years that made the move to Raleigh and we're still teaching. And a lot of those folks have now retired, but the message that they instilled into place about how to train lawyers to be litigators, it just runs through the place. And so, that taught me a lot about how to create a great organization that has staying power. It's something that they've certainly figured out, and something that you and I are still actively trying to figure out as we grow and build organizations ourselves. But that principled approach is absolutely a key.
Yeah, 100%. And I think especially when you look at it in a place with that much history and stability, I mean, it's just it really shows the value of that because over time, as you know, you do have people coming in and out of the school to really be able to kind of have again these driving pillars, this kind of mission sense. It just gives the direction of your firm, and I think that that's where a lot of solo firms and small firms somewhat, if you're operating without core values, then you're generally just kind of, moving in the direction that the person at the top, the leader, is moving on that particular day. If there's no kind of driving guideposts. And I think that was one of the, mistakes personally on my end in the early part of practice, is that we didn't have a good sense of who we were as an organization. We didn't have specific core values, a specific mission that we were operating around. And so every day it was just kind of like, where is Jake going to take the business today? Oh, well, now we're going into personal injury, or now we're
Yeah.
going into, this particular locational market. We're not, our system is changing. And it was just, always bouncing around, never, very consistent in terms of kind of what the overall strategy was. And that to me is so valuable in terms of having that kind of bigger picture and values that you are able to kind of measure your decisions against. Is this moving in the kind of overall direction that we want to move in, or is this inconsistent with who we are as an individual, or in the firm sense as a group? So yeah, that core value system is so important.
Yeah, I think that, and for I think the other thing that has sort of really helped us is a focus on our people,
Yes. Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
focus on, maximizing the longevity, and the just practice experience of our best people. You read these books about, the true value of an A player in your organization, and it just can't be there. There's no price that you can put on
There's
on
not.
just on just your very best people. And I think we've in some ways learned that the hard way, because we've lost some really great people
Yeah.
at times. And so, as we sort of, from the outside looking in, people would ask, okay, why are you practicing, criminal defense in most of your markets? But then we also have Daily Mills Family Law, which is a whole nother brand that we're trying to grow and that we're really excited about, and that Miranda Mills and Danielle Feller are heading up over in Mooresville. And the whole way that we got to having that practice was because it was something Miranda was interested in doing, and Miranda is one of our very best people, and somebody that we wanted to be partners with long term, for the rest of the time that I practice. I hope that I'll be partnered with Miranda, and pretty much have been my whole career. And when you have somebody that's that valuable, that anything they do is going to be great, you figure out a way to keep those people, even if it means going and acquiring another practice that you've never done before, which is what we did. We acquired a practice of a retiring family law attorney, which I think is an underutilized way to grow a firm. And it really has been an incredible experience for us, an incredible learning experience. It's taught us how to grow through acquisition. It has taught us how to work in a brand new practice area, and it has, created whole new avenues for growth that we never would have had before and that we never could have done in-house without, the expertise of that practice that we acquired.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely want to kind of take a dive into some of the kind of interesting ways that you have been able to kind of grow the firm through adding on practice areas or acquiring other law firms. Because as we talked about, I think that's really an underutilized setup. Uh, but just quickly before we move on from kind of that uh, kind of people focused culture that you were just talking about, I do think that this is one of the things that you know law firm owners are constantly trying to kind of assess and have questions about of how do you keep and grow your A players. And so do you guys have anything big picture or specifically that you do on that front to try to either attract or keep A players?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is having an organization that's worthy of attracting those people. Those folks a lot of times, they're going to be when they're looking for a job, like they're not just going to be applying to your LinkedIn post or applying to your Indeed post. They're asking questions. They're asking colleagues, what is the reputation of this organization? Is this a place that's going to, you know, enhance what I bring to the table. And I love being able to share with people, my story and what being in our system has done for me in my career, which is basically everything I've been able to accomplish in my career is because of our organization. I came into it. I'd spent 18 months doing nothing but indigent work in the second poorest county in the state. I graduated in the aftermath of the Great Recession in 2012 when they were three or four classes of lawyers that had no jobs. There were no jobs in Raleigh. There were no jobs in Charlotte. So me and my wife just kind of on a prayer took a job with a solo in Allegheny County, which is Sparta, in what was then the 23rd Judicial District. I think they've changed the numbers now, so I'll never know what it is now. But that experience was humbling. But it gave me a lot of experience in a really short amount of time. And then being able to then take that experience that I had and plug it into the megaphone or accelerator that is our practice. It was probably within 3 or 4 years after that I was handling my first homicide case.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Um, and that's a message that I'm able to share with folks that we're trying to attract is, show me a place where you can come in and within your first 5 years, you're going to be probably second chairing a first degree murder case. Or if you want to do federal work, that's an opportunity that we can provide that you're not going to find everywhere. I started working in the background on federal cases from my first day in the firm. And so, I think you find the things about your organization that are truly unique and that are opportunities that candidates are not going to find elsewhere. And, that stuff kind of speaks for itself. And that is what will both attract those A players and help you retain those A players, because if they know that the experience they're getting in your firm is one that they're just not going to get elsewhere, then it makes it really hard to leave.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a great segue kind of into, what your development has kind of been in terms of joining the Roberts team and then ultimately kind of going to your status as partner within the firm and then kind of looking at other ways of growing the firm, adding practice areas, adding lawyers outside the firm. I think for a lot of people that are considering opening their own practice, the only kind of trajectory to law firm ownership seems to be go hang your own shingle and start your own practice. And you've definitely got a different way, so to speak, in terms of being able to showcase there's other avenues toward law firm ownership. And everybody understands that if you join a firm, you may at some point become partner. But that happened relatively quickly in your particular situation. So just describe a little bit about kind of the process from going from associate to partner, and then, kind of where you guys have gone in terms of some outside the box ways of expanding the firm, growing the firm.
Yeah, so the path to partner for me was it was fast, and it was because I just never stopped working. You know,
Yeah.
like that's the formula for in a small firm, going from associate to partner it's both very difficult and very simple all at the same time. Difficult because of what it requires, but simple because what it requires is quite easy, and it's you just got to outwork everybody else that's there. Um,
That's so powerful. I'd say particularly in our day and age, I'll just kind of take a brief pause because I just think, there's all this mindset of like it's the old guard that used to work 80-hour weeks, and like, that's not what people, want anymore. And there's, people have millennials have different expectations, Gen Zers have different expectations in terms of workplace. And a lot of that is true, but there's very few things that like outshine just the hard work ethic. Like that's one of the things,
yeah,
is, yeah, it doesn't, it's not going away.
yeah, no, it definitely isn't. And our firm has changed a lot over the years and become, let's say, more millennial and down friendly. But we're still working really hard. I think we may now be doing it a little bit smarter than we were. When I started, we were attorneys had required office hours every other Saturday. We had a staff member who was off on Wednesdays, but who worked on Saturdays so that our phones could be manned on the weekends. And we were just putting it in, man. I mean, we
Yeah.
were working around the clock. And I learned so much from that. I think I told you before, when I joined our firm, I was immediately assigned over 100 DWI cases spread in different counties across like Raleigh extended, basically,
Yeah.
probably in 15 or 20 different counties. And, that was in the heyday of the DWI task force. They were investing more money in investigating and prosecuting DWIs in the state of North Carolina, probably than they ever have in history in that particular time period. And so I learned to practice law by trying DWI cases, by trying a DWI case probably every week, or more than one every week for 2 or 3 years. And it was just that simple. So that was the process for me. And side note, there's no better way to learn to practice criminal defense than trying DWI cases. It's I wish I could put every associate we have on that same plan. It's not feasible, for many reasons. But I wish I could, because man, what an incredible training ground and proving ground that is to learn to try cases. Because I think if you can try a DWI case at a high level, you can handle any type, like you can handle a murder case, you can figure out any case that needs to be tried, you can do it if you know how to try DWIs.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that is such a, yeah, I mean, it's such a great training ground because you have so often very little to lose. And so
Yes.
you're not putting your clients um circumstances in jeopardy, risking jail time or other things, depending on the county and sentencing factors that are going on potentially with your client. But there's a lot of, you know, rolling the dice doesn't feel that dangerous when it comes to pushing DWI cases to trial in the vast majority of situations. So I think it really is a wonderful place to learn to try cases. And I also think, there's a lot of prosecutors out there that enjoy doing that too. So
Yes.
it's a good way to, kind of earn some points within the system, so to speak, of being a lawyer that is known for trying cases, even again when the kind of risk factor is pretty minimal. So yeah, I think that's 100% like a huge benefit of doing a lot of DWI trials. Yeah, I mean, I think just getting after it as a associate again in a space that, I think that while a lot of the workforce and expectations within the workforce are probably in a good way moving to a more healthy like work-life balance, I do think that firm ownership in different stages requires more than that. Like
Yes.
there's a lot of, if you're trying to kind of like set your expectations as, I should be putting in as many hours as everybody else at the firm, probably in a bad spot for again, depending on what stage you are development wise in your firm, like that's likely the wrong attitude to have. And so again, if you're looking for, an entryway into partnership status, I think you've got to kind of show, look, I'm kind of like doing more than is expected. Like I'm kind of anting up, leveling up in this particular space. And again, that may mean, handling, a large caseload. It may mean, hey, we're going to push a lot of cases to trial. We're pushing the envelope in these particular uh, counties or whatever it might be. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of um, show the partners at the firm, hey, I'm kind of operating in a different space, and maybe that's to kind of like climb the hierarchy. Maybe it's because you really love practicing criminal defense, and it's just you're having a blast doing that. So, or a combination of those things. But yeah, I think that is very much like the pathway to success from associate to partner is just, clearly killing it. It's kind of
Yep.
like this person is just, they're operating at a different speed. There's, people, at our firm, where it's kind of been like, you're hearing from members of the bar, this lawyer is crushing it in this
Yes.
county. Like, they are, every time I have a question about a DWI situation, that's who I talk to. And so those are the kind of things that, as a partner that is looking to bring on, associate or junior partner into that kind of partnership role, it's like that's what you're kind of looking for feedback wise, is what is the word on the street, so to speak, but also you get to see it in the office as well. um
Yeah,
so yeah, I mean,
100%.
I think
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, there's not one law firm owner out there that wouldn't like to have or that couldn't use right now another associate like that.
Yeah.
Like we're all looking for that person who's willing to come in and work harder than everybody else and make a name for themselves by their work. So yeah, those opportunities are always there. We've changed things to improve work-life balance for our people. We let people go at 3 o'clock on Fridays because we found we really weren't doing a whole lot on Friday afternoons anyway. But maybe that means working late on another day when things are really busy. And we're not requiring people to come in on Saturdays anymore, but that doesn't mean folks, when they're preparing for a trial, aren't at home doing trial prep on a weekend, because as trial lawyers, that's just part of the game.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's always going to be room for people who want to just bust it, regardless of what generation they're in, and maybe they do have a slightly different mindset about work-life balance than the one that I came in with, which was probably not particularly healthy. But it worked for me.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think as you've kind of now, been in the partnership role, again, you've got just such an interesting perspective in terms of, again, going very quickly from associate to partner to kind of, buying out the named partner at the firm, and then, now really into looking to expand either locationally or practice area wise through acquisition of other firms. And as we've talked about, I think that is just a grossly underutilized um, opportunity for lawyers. There are so many law firm owners that are nearing retirement or retire, and basically there's no specific real exit strategy. It's just like, okay, this is, I'm either kind of letting my caseload slowly die out, or kind of just pick a day, and that's when we're gonna basically cancel the phone and take the website down, whatever it might be. There's a lot of built up capital in these lawyers that have been in their brand that have been built up over, 3 decades, 4 decades of practicing law, and not a lot of kind of opportunities, I think, being kind of looked into in terms of trying to buy out those firms. And you guys have done it now successfully several times. So in terms of just kind of walking through some of the either difficulties or learning lessons from buying out a partner or bringing in other practice areas, just kind of walk us through some of the things that you guys have learned through um, walking that path.
Yeah, so much. Well, both positive and negative. The process for us getting to acquisition in the first place was interesting because it came from us failing at doing it another way. We knew we needed to add more practice areas to really grow because, our footprint for criminal defense for the very small niche of criminal defense that we cover already spans all 100 counties. So that unless we're going to go to another state, which I don't have any plans for anytime soon, we knew we needed to find a way to bring in other practice areas. And it just so happened that Miranda was interested in spearheading that effort for us. It was just finding a way to do it the right way. And when we tried to do something in-house, like we just completely failed at doing it that way. Like it just we found that we could not necessarily just turn our marketing prowess on an entirely new practice area in a new location and have it just work. It unfortunately is not always that simple.
I think
Uh,
one reason why a lot of lawyers do that, I've done that several times and failed miserably trying to make that happen. I think that one reason we do that is if you started your own practice pretty early on in the game. So I started my practice a year after graduating. I worked with another lawyer here for just over a year and then started my own practice. You kind of think, well, I figured out the criminal defense thing on my own, so why not? Like, and that's only half true in my case because I learned a lot from the lawyer that I worked with for a year. There was a big learning curve that happened during that 1 year period of time, but I think it's kind of like I figured a lot of this stuff out on my own. Why not go figure out another practice area? One of the big differences in that to me is that when you start your own practice and you're a one-man show, you have a lot of time to get things figured out.
yeah,
And once you've already kind of built up a caseload and you've got other people working for you that you're responsible for, like jumping into a new practice area is a massive undertaking. And so it requires a lot of time, which generally speaking, at that point in life, when we tried it, couple years after I opened my firm, there was not enough bandwidth there. So I think that that's
yeah.
one of the frustration points. But yeah, sorry to cut you off on that front.
No, you're absolutely right. And so I think there's a couple of different ways to do it well. One is you could bring in somebody who's established, who's not retiring, who just brings their entire practice with them. I think that in some situations could be a really effective way to do it. But then, you may be bringing somebody into partnership in your firm that is an outsider to your firm. And so you're taking some risk there with your firm's culture and are they going to be an ideal fit? So in this situation, what we really liked about this setup was the ability to, okay, the baby boom generation is retiring. There's a lot of retiring lawyers out there who, as you've said, they have goodwill, they have the knowledge that they want to pass on and that we as younger lawyers need to be able to grow our firms. So there's an immediate fit there. And everybody's on the same, that lawyer does not want to continue practicing, so you don't have to worry about melding them so much into your organization, except for maybe a transition period. So instead, you're able to take their wisdom, their knowledge, their brand, all of that goodwill, and they can train you on how to do that practice area. And so that for us was a tremendous fit in terms of a way to grow. And there are deals to be had out there in that space because those lawyers otherwise, as you said, are just going to turn it off, and there's zero monetary value to that. So there's a great market incentive on both sides to work something out. It could be as simple as them selling you their phone number. Maybe there's no other transaction than just that. There could be tremendous value in just that phone number. It could be their knowledge of a particular practice area. It could be their name in a market where you are not. So I think there's a lot of really wonderful opportunities in that space as a way to grow and take advantage of this generation of lawyers that has all this knowledge and otherwise no way to impart it to the next generation of lawyers.
Yeah, there's just so much to take away from what you guys have done on that front because it's not getting utilized as a way of growing and expanding, and as a result it's hurting both lawyers that are moving out of the law space and retiring or kind of massively kind of downshifting what their firm looks like, and it's hurting lawyers that are trying to kind of pick up steam and build their practices. And, I've been trying to kind of think through what are some of the, roadblocks? What are some of the, kind of reasons why that's not explored more? And I think a big part of it is just that we aren't talking about these kind of things enough as a criminal defense bar in general. Acquiring other businesses outside of the legal space is something that happens pretty regularly. In fact, a lot of startups in, kind of the private space, the whole purpose of building the business is to get bought out. Like that's the entire,
Yeah.
the whole thought process. So, you watch Shark Tank, that's kind of like what the mentality is. Let's build something up so that it's valuable. It can be, we can bring on other partners or we can sell this thing. That's kind of the whole mentality in a lot of the private space. And for whatever reason in the law space, it's just something that is not really talked about a lot of, what is your kind of succession plan or exit strategy. And so I think part of it is just getting comfortable having these conversations. And so you don't have to walk up to, a lawyer and ask, hey, can I buy your firm from you? Like, what's the dollar figure you'd sell it for?
Yeah.
But I do think it's okay to go up and ask and be like, hey, can you tell me what you're thinking about in terms of like a succession strategy, or do you know kind of what you're kind of trying to do with your firm long term? I'm just interested in starting to kind of like plan my firm for the future, and kind of love to hear about what your thought process is. And I think you're either going to get like a very honest answer of I haven't thought about it much, or I'm just planning on working until I close shop, or you might get a lot of really interesting insights in terms of kind of what the plan is on that front. But I think trying to just figure out a way to open up the conversation about that is a great first step, even if it's not a business you're necessarily interested in trying to kind of work out some sort of agreement. Just getting that to be a little bit more a part of the conversation, I think, would be really healthy in the criminal defense bar.
Yeah, and not just in the criminal bar, but in the small firm bar
Yes. Yeah,
in
yeah.
general, which
100%.
is which is, expanding to other practice areas has made me think about, just small law firms
Yes.
in as opposed to just criminal defense, which, like you guys, I've always compared us to our direct competitors that are doing similar things. But as I sort of, pick my head up and look around a little bit, you start to look to other industries and you see that they're doing it better and they're having more open conversations, like you said. And you look at the small law firm space, and we just don't talk to each other
Yeah, that's
about
true.
much. We are probably the most protectionist industry and the slowest to change industry, and the industry that is the least likely to look at our peers in other industries and what they are doing and how successful it's being. But, change is coming. There's already a couple of states that have authorized non-lawyer ownership of law firms. I believe Utah is one of them, and I think there's one more out on the West Coast. And this has already happened in the veterinary practice space. There are lots of veterinary practices now that are conglomerates or owned by large corporations. And whether that's going to be good or bad for the legal field, I think is could be a subject of a whole other podcast. But I do think it's coming. And so the least we can do, I think, is to start have conversations with our colleagues about, hey, how can you retire and monetize that, and how can we, as the younger generation of lawyers, benefit from that, and how can the community at large benefit from the fact that that lawyer's practice doesn't just close its doors. There's so many positives that come from that conversation.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that in terms of evaluation of law firms, in part because there is no, private equity money or
Yep.
non-lawyer owners available currently in, North Carolina and most other states. It's kind of one of those things where the valuation is a big question mark because there's
Yep.
not a lot of money coming in to try to kind of say, hey, we're interested in buying out your practice. But unfortunately, I think for us, that actually, again, hurts lawyers that have built up a ton of brand in their firm. And then ultimately, there's really no market to sell it to, right? Like if you're in the
Yep.
small firm ownership space, it's kind of like you've got your small firm, I've got mine. This thing was built by me. It'll kind of, you know, end when I decide to stop practicing law. And I think that is such again, the valuation at some point is going to start becoming more clear of what your firm is valued at, even if you're not in a state where there's private equity coming in. There's valuations now going on in neighboring states, or not too far away. And so there's going to be more of this kind of conversation coming down the pike. It's just a question of who is really initiating that conversation. Is it us as as you said, more widespread bar making that a kind of focal point, or is it private equity money that's coming in and doing valuations? And how do you figure this out? I mean, again, the that ship has sailed to some extent. Like I think it's just a matter of time before that starts to spread into other spaces. I mean, there's just only so long that you can have that pushback. And so again, as opposed to seeing it as like how long can we hold that off, I think part of the question becomes, more how can we be prepared for when that does come and be, A, first appropriately valued, but B, be able to work with one another first before, the only option is to kind of sell out to private equity firm, or that's kind
Yep.
of the best way to do it. So I
Yep.
think, yeah, the more front end we can be on that end, the better.
Yeah, I think, ultimately there's a huge interest that the bar at large should have in ensuring these transitions, because if that small town lawyer just closes up shop and there's no transition plan in place, I mean, we see what that can lead to.
Yes.
A trustee is appointed, and it just becomes a gigantic headache if there is no succession plan. And so if we have a responsibility, ethical, legal, et cetera, to have that plan in place. And that could be transition. If you're a solo, it's more complicated, but if you're not a solo, that could be as simple as transition to your existing partners. And sometimes it's just as simple as that in assuring the ongoing nature of the firm and that the clients are well taken care of. And that was something that was really, really important in our firm transition, is, making sure that we're going to still be here, into the foreseeable future to serve the needs of our clients.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think yeah, it's so important. I yeah, I just think that there's got to be more of a conversation around that, and the more that we can start bouncing these ideas off of one another, the better suited we're going to be as these changes come down the pike.
Yeah, 100%. And hopefully people will take the opportunity to reach out to consultants, to reach out to financial advisors, to talk about, what we had that question, how do you value a law firm? we didn't just figure that out on our own. We did a lot of research. We talked to experts that value other businesses. We talked to them about the ways in which a law firm might be a little bit different than, we're not selling widgets.
Yeah.
So, you can't just directly transfer that revenue stream and say, okay, we're going to value it at 3 times earnings before interest and taxes, or what the accountants love to call EBITDA, a term that most lawyers probably aren't super familiar with. But valuing a law firm is not that simple. You can't just say, okay, it's going to be this multiple times this. Like there is always going to be some type of math equation, but you have to, what is the practice area? How transferable is that practice area? How tied to the owner's name is it? There's going to be a lot of those conversations, but your broker, your consultant, they're going to help you to understand these things. And the individual on the seller side, they're most likely going to have somebody that they're consulting with. And that's going to keep everybody honest, and hopefully to arrive at a value that is actually the correct value.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that it also is probably helpful in terms of, if you are looking to buy out a partner, having something meaningful to attach to on that front, just again, is creates a much more healthy conversation, I guess you could say, in terms of being able to even broach that subject. I mean, instead of just
Yes.
coming in and saying, we're picking these numbers out of the air, to be able to say, like, how are we going to sit down and say, how are we going to evaluate this thing? Let's bring in, a third party. Now, again, there's just more kind of shared ground on that front of, like, okay, we're asking the outside experts how to value this. So whether it is, again, you're looking to bring on, the business from another kind of long-standing firm, or bring on a new partner and trying to figure out, like, if you're trying to do a buy-in amount, or buy out a partner, whatever it might be, having, again, some sort of legitimate numbers. Again, obviously, some of this stuff is somewhat unpredictable, but at the same time, it's kind of like you got to have some sort of a shared starting point. And I think that really is healthy in terms of trying to make sure that whatever those relationships look like, that everybody kind of comes away feeling like this was a good conversation to have. So
Yeah, 100%. And anytime you enter into a partnership, it is like a marriage. They say that because it's true. And so having like an incredibly detailed partnership agreement is, I cannot overstate the importance of that. And you're never going to be able to plan for every conceivable situation. We certainly try as lawyers, we try to draft for every situation, but giving yourselves a framework from which you can later have a conversation when unexpected life circumstances happen. You never know when that might be. If you have that framework in place, it's going to make for a much better conversation when those issues arise.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, we got some really helpful feedback a couple of years ago when Lance and Get and I entered into partnership from a financial planner at Northwestern Mutual that had
Yep.
shared some documents that they had, another client, basically took names out and said, here's what some other clients have done. Talking again, like, with a financial planner, what happens if one of you dies, what happens if somebody wants to leave the firm and move on, like, at what valuation do you want to have that be sold. These are things that are important. I think that's really been, for us, it's allowed for a lot less concentration on the details now, because it kind of feels like everything was figured out on the front end. Again, obviously, like you said, you can't figure it all out, but it's definitely a place where, to me, it really allows for a lot more solid trust base, because everybody's operating from the same original expectation of what does this look like. The more that you can concretize that in the early goings, and just kind of know where expectations are, again, that just for all relationships, but certainly as for something as important as partnership, is really critical.
100%.
Well, we're kind of probably getting short on time. I think we only this go around we only got through like half the questions, Kevin, but I actually have kind of one that I think is kind of an interesting perspective just because you're unique in this space. So you've been all over the state of North Carolina practicing in different courthouses. I mean, truly a pretty large territory covered in the course of your career. And so, just kind of wanted to get your sense of some of the biggest takeaways, learning lessons from practicing, in all of these various counties across the state.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me has been no two counties are the same. Like
They're each
that's
their own universe.
they really are. Yeah, the number that I've had cases in now is over 80. I think
That's
it was
wild.
83 at last count, and then all three federal districts. And the biggest takeaway is just don't let relationships go. Like the building up and keeping of relationships with prosecutors, with clerks, with everyone and anyone that you meet. It you just can't understate the value of that, and that's the only way that I've been able to have a practice like that is to be able to have the cell phone number of the right person on the right day to send who's going to read and reply to my texts. Never let a prosecutor's cell phone number go, by the way. Those are like gold, but because prosecutors don't quit, they just relocate. Um, and so it's amazing how you'll be dealing with a DA one day, and there are prosecutors that I was dealing with in Wake County when I first started my career that I'm now handling cases on the coast, or defense attorneys who have now crossed over to the other side, or are now federal prosecutors. And so just the building of those it sounds simple, but that's been a key to my ability to practice statewide, and the only way that I've been able to do it, because there's going to be some days when you can only be in one place. There may be some days when I go to three counties, but you try to avoid those days if you can. And in Superior Court, there is a lot, like, district court is worse. There's a lot of wasted time in district, but even in Superior Court, most of the time you don't really need to be there. It's all just about
Yes. Yeah, that's
finding
so
that
true.
finding that person who's willing to confirm to you that you don't need to be there is another
That is
question
it.
in
That
time.
is so true.
That is art, not science. And that is, it's still a work in progress for me as I go to new places. I was in Dare County not long ago, for the first time on the Outer Banks. But it turned out that one of my law school classmates is a public defender in Dare County, and so I was able to call her up and get the lay of the land. And so, relying on your network and relying on, all the relationships that you just don't let go, throughout your career, because you never know when that person may pop up in a position to be able to help you.
Man, that's that 100%. Like it's all at the end of the day, it is all about relationships and yeah, the more you've got those built up, there's just really no replacement for that. I mean, especially when you're operating in that type of scale of counties and you're having to be in multiple places at once, or at least on the docket in multiple places at once. Relationships is everything. So yeah, I mean, 100% agree, Kevin. Again, I can't thank you enough for coming on and doing the podcast 2.0
Yeah.
so quickly. I really appreciate your not calling and being violent with me after I forgot to record our first conversation. We definitely
I,
went in a different direction, so at least I was learning a lot both times. So
you are now a key expert on my life and career after these two
I'm going to be
conversations.
writing the biography. So
Oh gosh. Well, it's been a pleasure times two. And we'll look forward to, I appreciate the fact that you've opened up this conversation with lawyers across the state. I think it is a great step in the right direction for criminal defense attorneys to just start talking to each other. And you're doing a great job facilitating that conversation. So keep it up.
thanks very much, Kevin. Definitely will.
All right, Jake. Have a good one.
You too.